Hello and welcome to the Discover Dayton podcast, the show that's all about the Gem City's past, present, and future. My name is Arch Grieve, and I'm your host, and today I'm excited to talk to Mike Bankhead. Mike is a fellow Xenian who moved to Dayton, who is a great indie rock artist. He's a super talented bass player and lyricist, and I really enjoy his stuff. Join me as I talk with him today about growing up in Xenia, his music, his podcast, and more. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on today.
Oh, thanks for welcoming me in this podcast exchange.
Absolutely. Well, so, we both grew up in Xenia, and we're also both friends with Terry Martin, who is the host of the Gem City podcast. And you asked me on this on your podcast. So, of course, my first question I have to ask you is, what did your childhood smell like?
Books. See, I was ready for that one.
Nice, good.
And so the reason I'm ready for it is because I went on Gem City podcasts more than once. Mm-hmm. And the first time I went on, Terry Izzy Rock Martin was not asking that question yet.
Okay.
But by the later time I went on, he was. But since I was a regular listener, I was ready.
Nice.
So the answer is books, because as long as I can remember, I like to read stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And credit to my mom, because she worked very hard to make sure I could read before I went to kindergarten. So in school, when many of my classmates were still learning to read, I could already do it. And
That's awesome.
I don't need to tell you this. You're a college professor. So much knowledge comes from books, and being able to read is a good way to introduce yourself to the world. So I read everything when I was a child. Lots of sports, lots of science fiction stuff. But totally a lot of nonfiction. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to learn about everything. And we had a World Book Encyclopedia set in our house. And yeah, I kind of read that.
That's awesome. Well, I'm imagining too, because we weren't, super far apart. I'm guessing we had some of the same teachers back in school too. But
could be. I'm at Tecumseh Central Junior High. That's the path I took back when it was called junior high. Which path did you take over to the high school?
Shawnee to Central. I was one of the last groups of students when it was a junior high, I guess. So
okay, so maybe we had some of the same teachers at Central or the high school.
I'm guessing we did.
If you had people that were particularly old, perhaps.
Well, I remember a lot of those, but these days I probably wouldn't have thought they were as old as I thought they were then. So was
Schumacher still band director at Central when you were there?
Yeah, he was.
I loved that guy.
I do too. He's hilarious. But yeah, he was great. So he definitely helped me have a greater appreciation for music, for sure.
I wasn't in band, but I was friends with all the band nerds.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would, try to hang out around the band. And also I had Shu for study hall, which, since his personality, was less about studying and more about him telling jokes for 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious then, if you weren't in band, I know both your parents were musically inclined. So I'm wondering, how did they help instill in you a passion for music, and what did they like to play in terms of, instruments and types of music?
Well, music was always in the house. I remember there being a turntable in the house from as far as I can remember back to the first house I actually remember living in. There was a turntable in the living room. Dad was a drummer, and he didn't have a drum set anymore by the time that I came along.
Mm-hmm.
But he'd always talk about his favorite drummers and pound on stuff together with songs. And if we ever went to a party where there was a band, he'd managed to weasel his way into sitting in on a song behind the kit. So it's not like he was making it up. He could actually do it. Mom didn't play anything, but always listen to music. So there were songs and music going on pretty much all the time. In fact, I can tell you the song that I remember hearing at the earliest stage in my life was Babe by Styx. And the thing that is funny is, I'm Googling right now to see what year it came out. I didn't know that was the band that made that song until I was an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just knew the song because I remember hearing it. It's the earliest song I can remember hearing. It came out in 79. I was born in 77, so I was 2 when my parents were playing it all the time, and they had to have had that record. Because I remember hearing it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was old before, I'm not old, but I was a fully grown adult before I knew which band had done that song. But
well, there's a lot of songs like that, I think, still for me. So every time I go to trivia, it seems like they play a song and I learn a new artist that I didn't realize I had heard before. So
memories are weird that way, right?
They are. They really are. Especially mine. It's not that great. But I know, though, that you play a number of different instruments. So what all instruments do you actually play? And what is your favorite one to play, if you had to choose?
So I play bass, and that's my favorite. And that's really the only instrument that I will tell people I play.
Okay.
I mean, I took piano lessons, and I write songs on piano usually. But to say I play piano is an insult to people that actually play piano. And I'd rather not do that to them. So, yeah, I'm a bassist. I came to that late in life. I was around 19 or 20 before I actually bought an instrument and started learning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, it would have been nice if I had gone to a music class in school and learned an instrument, because looking back, I know this now, but the music theory base that you get, even if, a lot of kids don't understand they're getting that bass, but you absorb so much from playing and learning to play with others, and the ability to sight read, which I can do, but like a 2.5-year-old reads really slowly with a lot of mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are some skills that if I had been able to be in band as a child or to be forced to learn an instrument, I would have been grateful to have those skills now. I picked up all of my music knowledge rather late in life, so I feel like I'm catching up on a lot of people still as far as musicians that have a head start. But I learned because I wanted to learn, I wanted to play, and I loved it. And so the way my brain works, I needed to know how music works, so I basically started researching and teaching myself music theory because that's the way I learn. There's a lot of musicians that know theory, but they know it internally, but they can't express to you why they know what they know. They just say, hey, this sounds good and this works. But that's not the way my mind works. In order to do something, I need to understand it thoroughly, and to me that meant I needed to research it and study. And so I'm not one of those gifted people that just... maybe I am gifted, I guess, but not with music. I should say that my gifts lie somewhere else. So I'm not one of those gifted musicians that can just pick up an instrument and do stuff. I need to learn how it works and then practice and practice and practice and practice. And nobody sees all that work that you put in, of course. But not to say that the gifted folks don't practice, because they do. Everybody's got to put their 10,000 hours in, right? That's the saying. Is that some things will come a little bit easier, or they'll be executed a little bit better by somebody with natural gifts. But wanting to express myself through music keeps me going. So that's a roundabout way to say, turn up the bass, kids, because it makes you groove in the car.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what made you get the bass? You're just interested, or?
Yeah, I tell folks, people, why didn't you play guitar? Well, when you're riding around with your boys, nobody turns up the treble, right? There's even a song about that, all about the bass.
Exactly.
Right?
Very true.
So I hung out with a lot of musicians in my teens. A lot of my friends were musicians or in bands, and I would go to band practice and sing, or I'd have someone to teach me 2 or 3 guitar chords. And I just got sick of just always sitting and watching when I could do if I just learned how to play an instrument, and I wanted to choose bass. So one day, a couple of the guys took me to Sam Ash in Columbus, and I walked out of there with the bass I have now.
That's really cool. Well, speaking of your music, one thing, I listened recently to what I think is your most recent release, which is Hold the Wick. Is that most recent?
Yeah, that's the most recent.
And you took a really cool approach to it that I'm hoping you can talk about and explain, because it sounds like it was a really collaborative process and coming up with all these different remixes of it, right?
Yeah. my music's always collaborative because I'm a solo guy that writes full band compositions, so I'm limited in what I could do myself. So from the get-go, just even the original mix, I had a friend come in and play guitar. I had community Dayton drummer Brian Hoflick playing the drums. I tracked it over at Real Love Recording Studio with Patrick Himes, who does a lot of the fine records that you hear coming out of our city.
Nice.
But this song didn't really fit. Like, I didn't think it was ever going to fit on an album. And as an old fella, I still believe in the album as a cohesive art form.
Sure, absolutely.
But I wanted to release it. And look, it's short, it's ear candy, it's catchy, short and punchy. And I thought, all right, so what can I do that's kind of unique that I don't remember seeing people in our music community here in Dayton do? And you hate to think that way, but it's so hard to get people to listen to you, to get people to spend time with your music, that anything you can do to differentiate yourself or try something unique is useful.
Sure, yeah.
So then that's not the only reason that I embarked on this project, but it was definitely a contributing factor. And I thought, this song is short enough that it would be interesting to let people run wild with it and turn it into something different. Musicians, we all have the same tools, but we approach the craft in a different way.
Sure.
And I personally don't have engineering and mixing skills, so if someone were to hand me a bunch of stuff and say, go do this remix, is something that I would not be able to do well. But I know a lot of people that can, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to put together basically a CD single. If you remember, Arch, back in the day, you'd go buy a CD single, and there'd be like the one song that was on the radio, but there was like 5 or 6 other songs on the disc because you'd feel like you were tossing money away if you bought a CD and only got one song.
Right.
So I wanted to basically make a CD single for the modern era because I wasn't going to press CDs. It cost too much money to press for a single. But, one song, but a whole bunch of goodies. So I started reaching out to musicians that I had met or that I knew personally, one of which I met on Twitter, strangely enough, and was like, hey, I have this project. I have this single. Would you be interested in remixing it in the genre and style of your choice? Like, I didn't give anybody any boundaries or any rules. I was like, here's the stems, go.
Nice.
And the first one I got back was from Dayton musician Rich Reuter. It was jazz fusion. And that is about the last thing I expected, which is exactly what I wanted, right? Like, I listened to it, and I'm like, what in the world is he doing? This is awesome. Like, I went from not understanding it to being, it's like, this is so good. It's like, I didn't know there was a jazz song in there.
Right, yeah.
Turns out there is.
That's so cool. So then I was wondering about that. So they didn't, like, you weren't re-recording it every time with them. You just kind of gave them the file and they completely did the remix on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. So for non-musicians, so the way this works in the studio, since I don't have a full band, is I go to the studio and the drummer plays first, and each piece more or less of the drum set is got a microphone on it. So in the computer, each one is in a different file. The floor tom, the hi-hat, the kick drum, the snare, different files for all that stuff, so the engineer can adjust levels accordingly. And then when he's done, I play bass. And when I'm done, the guitarist plays all the guitar that needs to be played. And when everything's done, then you go back and sing. So singing in the studio is basically karaoke to your own song, to make it clear for people. But all of those pieces are in different files in the computer, and in the business, those are called stems.
Gotcha.
So it's those stems that were provided to everyone. Some of the people, I shouldn't say some, at least one of them didn't even listen to my song. Like, didn't even listen to the original version. Just grabbed this because they wanted to make sure they weren't influenced by it, right? So I know at least one of the people just grabbed the stems, listened to the vocal track only, and then rebuilt the song from scratch.
Oh wow.
Rich definitely listened to the song, but he also just took the vocal track and more or less rebuilt the song from scratch. So everybody who did it had kept different pieces of the song, discarded different pieces of the song. 2 of the versions don't even have the vocal in it. So everybody took a different approach, which is awesome. And it's just kind of cool that there's so much so many interesting things that can be done with the same building blocks.
For sure, yeah. Well, that's a really interesting concept that you came up with. I love that. So
I'm glad you like it. I hope people find it and listen to it. And I should say, to accompany the 8 versions of Hold the Wick, there are also 8 music videos. So in today's world, the generation, I guess you'd call them Zoomers, the really young folks apparently can't listen to music without looking at something these days. So the music marketing experts say, when you release a song, you really should release a video for each song. And that's kind of hard for indie artists because, that ain't free.
Right.
But, on this project, there is a music video for each version of Hold the Wick. The original version video is the one that I released first. And since then, I've been releasing one per week every Thursday, strangely enough. So there's a new one out today. I don't know when this podcast is going up, but let me check my calendar and I'll tell you which one was out today. Okay. So this morning, the Baby Molly remix music video went up on YouTube and on Facebook. Gotcha. And as soon as we're done chatting, that reminds me that I need to go socially media amplify that and tell people it's out. Go watch it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But each video has a different character and a different style, and I very much enjoyed watching what the director I hired has been coming up with. Mm-hmm. I don't have that skill set to be able to tell stories visually that way, and I'm not just saying this because this is my song in the background. I'm also not just saying this because I consider him a friend. It's really good work. A couple of these are works of filmatic art in their own right, setting aside the actual music part. And I would like him to get some recognition for the work that he did. I mean, the song, my name's on it because it's the song behind it. But, music videos are unique in that they're... if you want to make a short film instead of a commercial for a song, you can do that. And that is kind of the approach that he took.
And who is this, or can you share?
Oh, yeah, Brandon Berry, Daytonian who has abandoned us for the West Coast. So,
okay.
But yeah, Brandon Berry, who also Dayton musicians might know as the gentleman behind the Paint Splats. That's his music project. He's one of those guys that just is talented in many ways, and making films is one of those ways.
Oh, that's awesome. I was actually wondering if you did those yourself or you had someone else do it. So
Oh, no.
I was going to say, if so, you were really talented. So
I am not that talented. I basically said, hey, Brandon, are you willing to do this? And then we negotiated a price, and then I said, be creative. Follow your artistic vision.
Very cool.
Yeah, he would ask me for so what kind of thing should I do? And I'm like, I don't know. That's why I hired you. I'm paying you to have the idea of this. I wrote the song. I'm done.
There you go. That's funny. Well, one thing that you kind of cleared up for me is related to my next question that I had for you. So it was whether or not you worked with the same artists or different ones on each of the songs and albums, which I knew you did, obviously, for Hold the Wick, but I wasn't sure for your other songs and stuff. So I'm curious, who are some of the other artists that you've worked with or have worked with in the past on some of your stuff?
So it's a rotating cast of some of Dayton's finest musicians.
Nice.
I have had Dayton legend, he'll hate it knowing that I refer to him as that, Todd Widener play on several of my songs.
Oh yeah, cool.
Rich Reuter has played on my work. The percussive power couple of Chris Blank and Eric Reith have played on my work. Brian Hopelick has been my only drummer as far as the things that I've released so far. Tim Pritchard from the Boxcar Suite and also Shrug has played on my songs. Kyle Byram from Salvador Ross played on a song on my first record. It's a long list of people that have stopped by. The thing about our community is that usually if you ask nicely, people will say yes if they're at all available.
Right.
And there's, there's a dozen people that I didn't mention. Eric Cassidy played guitar on a song that's not out yet, but it will be someday. Accordion on some stuff. He double-tracked Theremin on a song on my first album, which is a high level of skill and craziness to even think about attempting.
Can you explain what that is?
Oh, yeah. Theremin is an electronic instrument invented in like the 1920s by a fellow named Leo Theremin. I believe that was his first name, Leo, but Theremin was definitely his last name. I think he was Russian. And it is an instrument that you play by not touching. So it's an antenna and a point straight up and like a flat control board. And the way it works is there's an electromagnetic field around the instrument. Well, there's one everywhere, but the instrument makes one in its own orbit. And when you put something into the electromagnetic field, like your hand or elbow or backside or head, it changes the pitch and volume of the sound coming out.
Okay.
Everyone here has heard it.
Mm-hmm.
It's in all kinds of horror movies. It makes that spooky ooh sound. Right. Anyone that's heard Good Vibrations has heard it because it's in that very famous Beach Boys song.
I was just going to ask that. I was like, that's what that is, isn't it?
That's what that is.
Gotcha.
So the thing is, since there's no like frets and there's nothing to tell you that you're playing a C or a G or an E, you have to have really good ears.
Yeah.
and fine body control to be good at this instrument. And yes, there are people that do it professionally, and the foremost thereminist in the world is a lady named Carolina Eick out of Germany, and she invented a technique by which, through precise hand control, she can play the scale, but the same way each time. Like, she's figured out basically how to fret an instrument that doesn't have frets.
Oh, wow.
And she teaches her technique, and she plays with symphonies and full sheet music. She plays with the theremin. Most people are not at that level. You just have to have really good ears. So Eric has good ears, and he's a great musician. And so when I said that we double tracked it, that's when you're in the studio and you play an instrument twice for a thicker sound. It doesn't make the recording louder because you have a volume button. It just gives you more body, more oomph. And especially if you have your mixing person send some of the sound to the left side of the speaker and some of the sound to the right, which we call panning, it can make it sound very surroundy and just a nice, lush feeling. So, like on a guitar, pretty easy to play the same thing twice in a row, right?
Sure.
On the theremin, not so much, because you're essentially moving your body around in the air and listening for what's happening.
Right.
So that's what I mean when I said it's a pretty amazing thing to watch somebody double track theremin. So that's on the outro to IO, which is the song on my first record. I love listening to it. I mean, I like the song, but just especially every time I hear it, I'm like, hey, we double track theremin on this. I just start giggling to myself.
That's so cool. I had forgotten. That was another thing. I had forgotten what those were.
Yeah.
Because I know I've heard that before.
Our fellow Xenians, the New Old Fashioned, have been on my records. David's played on a handful of songs, piano and voice, and I had the choral harmonies of the New Old Fashioned guys on my first record. So I know I'm missing people and leaving people out, and I don't mean to do that. I'm grateful to everyone that has spent their time and energy coming to the studio with me and making my music turn out, listenable.
Well, it's definitely more than that. And one thing that I noticed in doing some research on your songs was Bright Ideas was inspired by a pretty well-known Dayton indie rock group that I'm a big fan of, which is Guided by Voices. So who I've seen twice now, but I can definitely hear their influence in Bright Ideas for sure. So I'm wondering, are you a big GBV fan? And why did you want to do a song that was kind of inspired by them? So
yes and no. Yes, in that I love those guys and their work. And really, you can't do indie rock in this town without, they cast a long shadow over indie rock when you're from Dayton, right?
Oh, yeah.
The no part is they release so much music that I can't keep track of their discography anymore.
Oh, no, yeah.
Like, I know there's easily 30, 40, 50 maybe GBV records that I'm like, yep, haven't heard that one yet. There was a span in time when I got them all right when they came out, and there's a bunch that I know very well and by heart. But over the last 3 or 4 years, and credit to Bob Pollard and all those guys for being able to be creative and figuring out a way to record a whole bunch. I mean, at this point in their career, they have enough money and time and tools that they could just go record anytime, and not all of us indie musicians have those resources, right? But like he put out like 3 records 2 years ago and 2 more last year, and I think there's one already out this year. And it's like I can't keep track. But
yeah,
having listened to a lot of Bob Pollard songs and a lot of Guided by Voices songs over the years, I've definitely learned things about songwriting from them. I've learned, for instance, that you don't need to have a chorus. You might notice that Bright Ideas has no chorus.
Oh, I did not. I'm not as perceptive as that.
Which is a little rebellious because, you know, if you talk to a songwriting, quote, expert, quote, they're like, hey, you need to get to the chorus in the first 45 seconds of your song. You'll lose a listener, and it needs to be super catchy. And it's like, you know, write the song however you want to write the song. Don't listen to this nonsense. You know what? If you don't want a chorus, don't write one. Just write the entire song. Make everything catchy. And that's something that I've learned from Guided by Voices songs. They have a bunch of songs that, I mean, they have 30-second songs in their catalog, and it's over. And you're like, that's it. You wanted more. How cool is it to write a hook that's so compelling that you can just leave it after 30 seconds and people will be like, I wanted more of that song. So I joke that that's my Guided by Voices song, except for it's about 90 seconds too long.
Yeah. I think that is one thing I like about them too, is that, you know, you get to hear a lot of different songs. So
yeah, they don't do that all the time,
right?
But they do it enough that it's kind of a noted, right? They're kind of noted for song brevity on occasion.
Oh, and sure.
If you've seen them, you know that like it enables them to play like 50 songs in a concert.
Right. Yeah. I've got a good friend who loves going to their shows, and he's kind of a super fan, I would say. But you know, he's gotten their set lists a few times, and I'm just always amazed by how long it is.
Yeah.
They just have so many songs on it.
You go to a GBV show, if you're a fan, you're guaranteed to hear something that you really wanted to hear, and you're guaranteed to not hear about 4 things that you also really wanted to hear.
Right. Yeah. And for me, in my case at least, also a lot of new stuff every time I go that I didn't know that they sing. So, but that's awesome. Yeah, I'm a big GBV fan as well, but I definitely don't know all of their work for sure.
Oh, it's hard. I've seen them. I feel like I've seen them 3 times, maybe 4, but it's been a long time since I saw them live. Like we're talking before the breakup, before they said they were never going to do it again, which feels like Bob says that every 5 years. But no, before the big breakup, where they went to Chicago and played the double show and released a DVD about it, which I have and which is excellent. It's been before that since I've seen them, so it's easily been 20 years.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, all mine have been. I didn't get into them until fairly recently, and my buddy kind of introduced them to me. So I've got a lot to learn still.
I mean, it's good that they kept going.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, and really, they have the kind of career that as a musician, that's what you want. And I'll explain that. There is a small subset of people that will spend money on anything that band produces.
Oh yeah.
No questions asked. Does it mean that they're going to be platinum or gold or no? That's not what they are. But they have an army, a small but effective army of loyal listeners, and it doesn't matter what they release, they're going to get X number of sales, and that enables them to make a sustainable living from their music. I don't know that these are super rich rock stars living in luxury. I mean, Bob still lives in town, doesn't he?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I think so.
Like, I'm pretty sure he still lives in Dayton. But they can make a living doing what they love to do. And that right there is all I want out of music.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, getting back to your music, I saw on your website that you're working on a concept EP.
Yeah.
Looking at Black experiences and emotions, and I'm wondering what you can share about that.
Oh, I can share anything about that. Do you have a specific question, or should I just ramble?
You can just ramble a bit, because that was all I saw that it was about. So I don't really know anything else it's about. So I'm curious what, maybe what experiences you're drawing on and things like that.
So I write all the time, not like Bob does, but who writes like Bob does, right? But I write a lot, and especially there was a lot of writing during the pandemic, and I've noticed that I had more than a handful of songs that were specifically about Black experiences. I've done this before. I released a single called Anecdote that Tino featured on. And that song, both of us are telling stories about driving while black, getting pulled over by the police when you didn't do anything and being harassed. And,
Right.
if you're a black male, this has happened to you more than once. It is what it is. And we all have that experience. And, we talked about it in a song because you talk about your experiences and emotions in songs.
Right.
So I've got a few of those about various experiences that are unique to people of color. And instead of sprinkling them across multiple releases, I figured let's just put them on the same EP. Let's tell a thematic story.
Sure.
Since all of the songs on the EP are uniquely about Black experiences, the artistic aesthetic of the project is that all of the personnel on the record are Black people.
Oh, nice.
So the reason for that is, like, Arch, I can tell you about this thing that happened, and you'll be like, oh, that's terrible. That's not the same as you being able to say, oh, yeah, that happened to me too. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
So there's a different level of how people relate to the things in these songs based on their life experience. And for the artistic aesthetic of the project, I wanted people that could personally relate to these songs. So that doesn't mean I don't like working with people who are not Black. As you know, my regular cast of musical characters in this town are not people of color.
Right.
But for this project, that's the direction I'm going. So that means that on this project, I'm not working with my regular engineer, Patrick Himes. I'm working in a studio out of Columbus with a gentleman named Rizzo, who's outstanding.
Nice.
It's made me have to do a little bit of extra networking to go find musicians out of my normal comfort zone. And I've been meeting new people and building new relationships and sharing art and sharing stories. And that's kind of cool and rewarding in its own right, because one of the things that art helps us to do is express ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
So on this album, every song on it is going to be in a different genre. That's kind of the other
interesting.
The other musical hook. So if for folks that aren't familiar with my music, I'm a rock and roll kind of guy, and if I was giving you my elevator pitch, I would say that I make hooky Midwestern rock with strong power pop influences.
I like it.
That said, I've written a Latin flavored salsa kind of song that's out on my website. I've talked about Anecdote, which is a song that's got a rap break in it. I've got a song that touches on shoegaze. I've got an Americana song. I've got a lullaby with violin and accordion. Playing around with the concept of genre and sounds is not something that is a recent thing that I've done.
Right.
And yeah, some of these songs are best expressed in ways other than rock and roll. So I decided to fully lean into that on this EP. So concept EP, first person Black experiences are the through line. Every song on this record is I am the voice of the song. I'm the person talking, and that's not always the case when you're a songwriter. Being able to write from different perspectives is something that a lot of us like to do. Some of the songs we write are not true stories. Like we can write fiction just like a fiction writer. That's not the case here. This whole EP is very first person. It's open and it's vulnerable and it's emotional, and it's going to be a little scary to release it.
Sure.
None of it is promoting any social or political solutions. So you won't hear me telling people what to do or what to feel. Essentially, the vibe is, here is this thing. Here is my experience related to this thing. Here is how I feel about it. The listener can take from that what they may.
Nice.
But yeah, a little scary. But sometimes making honest art can be scary, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's really cool. I can't wait to hear that. Do you have you're still in the process of recording, right? Is that
still
right?
in the process of recording. I either have one more recording session left or two more, and then it's on to mixing and mastering. So, but it's done enough that I can see the end. It's not quite all the way finished, and it's not quite all the way polished, but I know this is cliche, but it's the best thing I've ever done. And the artists always say that. And I feel like the reason we say that is if you release something and you think you did something better than that before, you should probably keep working on it and not release it. You know,
Right.
like
Yeah.
always try to be better, always try to improve. But, you know, especially because of my limited experience, I'm a much better musician than I was when I first started making albums.
Sure.
I'm a better songwriter than I was when I first started making albums. I am more familiar with the recording process and how to be efficient. And so, like, I have improved in my skill set. So the next thing should be better as a whole, right? Not to say that each individual song is the best song I've ever written. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying as a whole artistic statement, when this is done, it'll be the best one I've done so far.
No, I think that makes total sense. And I'm looking forward to hearing that for sure. Well, I know, too, recently you were also at UD as a guest panelist for a conversation about the Dayton music community, and that seems like a pretty cool thing to be invited to. I'm just wondering, what was that conversation all about?
That was a conversation paneled by Dr. Art Gibson, who is a criminal justice and sociology professor at UD. And the topic was crafting music community in the funk city. So the speakers in that panel were a handful of musicians and one music promoter from Dayton. So that was, in addition to me, the fantastic rapper Kay Carter, Amber Hargett, who's a great songwriter and singer lady, Paige Beller, who's also a great songwriter and singer lady in multiple genres, and who, if you have not seen do a show, you really need to see Paige do a show, because Paige basically plays as an entire band with just herself.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I have not. Yeah. I need to check her out.
Yeah, basically, she has songs where she plays a different instrument with each appendage, and I'm not even lying to you. It'll knock you out. Knock you out. It's awesome. But in addition to Paige, and by the way, Paige doesn't like it when we say nice things about her. I think it makes her uncomfortable. So sorry, Paige. But she really is awesome. I'm not making that up. In addition to Paige, our fellow Xenian David Payne was on that panel from the New Old Fashioned.
Nice.
And Don Thrasher, who's not only a musician, but a longtime freelance journalist, and he also is a journalist for the Dayton Daily News. So a professional journalist and a longtime musician who's been making music for over 30, probably closer to 40 years. He's done time in Guided by Voices, because I feel like of a certain generation, everybody's been in Guided by Voices. So he's of a generation where he's been in Guided by Voices before, and he's really got his finger on the pulse of music in this community and in this region. And more than the journalism and the experience, that dude just loves music. Like, it's not fake.
Right.
You'll see him out at shows. You'll see him out at Levitt with his wife dancing and just having fun. Like, yeah, he's awesome. He's a good dude to have in our community. And the non-musician on the panel was Brian Johnson, who of Level Up Productions, which is a promotion company. So they put together shows, and they basically liaise between the music community and the fan base and the venue. And the conversation was about big picture. What can we do? What kind of music community already exists, and what can we do to make it better? How do we support independent music as an art form in the community? It was a privilege to be invited to talk and offer some thoughts along with all of these really interesting and talented people. And some of the things that were said, some of the things are things that we as musicians can do. Some of the things are things that we really don't have control over, and we need community assistance with. One of the topics, or one of the suggestions that came out, and this is something I think all of us musicians believe, is that we should see more variety on shows. Like, and Paige said this very clearly in the symposium. If you have a show and the bill is 3 bands that all do the same kind of music, it's the same people at the show, right? So in our town, there's like the metal community, and there's like a hip hop show, and indie rock and country and folk and blues. That's not one community. It's a whole lot of little communities, and it'd be healthier for art if there was some more merging. Sometimes that's not possible, but why couldn't you have a folk band and a hip hop act and a punk band on the same show?
Yeah.
Right? You got to find a venue willing to take a chance on that, and you got to find artists that would be into it. But there, you know, Mick used to do that at Canal Street, not so much with hip hop or metal, but he would have different genres in the wider rock and roll umbrella on the same gig. Bands that you were like, I don't see why those bands would play a show together, and then you go and it's great. So it's something that would expose more people to more different kinds of music. I don't know a lot of people, for instance, that like just can't stand or won't ever listen to hip hop. Like they'll be at a rock show, but they might nod along to an old Dre tune, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's put a Dayton, Ohio version of Dre on a stage next to a rock band and see what happens. So I'm actually trying that out. I like to do it more often, but I booked a gig at Blind Bob's on Sunday, May 15th. And I'm the indie rock guy, and Kay Carter's going to play that gig, so he's a hip-hop guy. And I've got a pop band based in Sweden, strangely enough, and that's going to be on that gig. So a touring band, and they're not from here. But part of the community is being able to support musicians that are on the road trying to make a living. So, and these are musicians that I know personally from having met them at a conference, and they're really good, all right? Good songs, they're good performers. So, yeah, three genres, one show. Hopefully people come and have a good time and see something new, and maybe they'll hear their new favorite song. You never know.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that's a great idea. I hope more venues start to do that. So shifting gears a little bit, one thing that we have in common, which, you know, you've mentioned before, is of course that we both have podcasts, and yours is called You Could Be My Aramis, or am I saying that right? Because I didn't read the book. Okay. So I'm hoping you can maybe explain the inspiration behind that podcast name for people like me who had to look it up, and then maybe talk a little bit too about what it's all about and where people can find it.
It's a song lyric from track 9 on my first record, a song called Carry On, which is kind of about friendship, but using the Three Musketeers as a metaphor.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's also the name of my music publishing company, my LLC, because when you're a musician, you're essentially a small business owner. And since I'm not about to run afoul of the Ohio Treasury Department nor the IRS, I have my own business to handle all that stuff. And the name of my company is You Could Be My Aramis Music, LLC. And I figured that's unique enough that there's not going to be anything else called that. So
sure.
And essentially, it's just me having conversations with people. Mostly it's been people I know. It's been a couple of, I don't want to say strangers, but people I don't know well. But it's been 90% about music, but we'll go into other topics. I had a baseball episode because I'm a baseball fanatic. I will eventually have people on to talk about food and cooking and travel. And, you know, essentially it's an excuse for me to chat with somebody and get it recorded. And, I mean, here's how it started, Arch. It's when I did those remixes. There's a music marketing person I follow on Twitter. This is becoming a through line for me, and the reason I keep saying music marketing is not that I enjoy it. I don't. But if you don't do any marketing, no one will ever listen to your music.
Right.
If you don't believe me, when's the last time you saw a TV show with no commercials?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Unless you might have fast-forwarded through the commercials, right? But there's commercials for a reason. Marketing is a thing that you have to do in order to sell things. And in music, if we are asking people to give us funds in exchange for a CD, like it or not, we're selling things.
Right.
Might not like it, but that it is what it is. So a music marketing fellow on Twitter was like, hey, if you have people doing remixes of your songs, what you should do is you do a podcast and you talk to them about the remix. That's hashtag content, right? And it draws attention to the song. And I was like, hey, I got 7 remixes of this song. I could do that. And then I thought, why would anyone want to listen to 7 episodes of me just talking about my song with one other person? So it started off with being that, a way to promote Hold the Wick. And it evolved into, let me just talk to people about stuff. Sure. Now, I have definitely done the podcast interviews where I've talked to the remixers of Hold the Wick. But we didn't only talk about that. We talked about that artist, their background, what kind of music they make, right? So cross-promotion, mutual promotion. And there's episodes where I don't talk about me at all, those are my favorite ones, right? When I'm trying to help another artist promote their work.
Sure.
So also the other niche this fills is last year, I had a particularly bad depressive, suicidal ideation episode. And so I go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, you need to have one meaningful conversation every day with somebody who is not your wife.
Interesting.
Tough goal, but, we try. So, by the way, Arch, this counts as my meaningful conversation for today.
I'm glad I could help.
I'm glad you could help, too. But, like, the podcast is great. I discovered I just like talking to people, and I like letting people talk about what they're interested in.
Right.
I find that many more people than we might think are interesting if you let them talk about what they are interested in.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. I honestly, I'd done podcasting for a while, a long time ago, just off and on. But then the pandemic hit, and I got really bored because I was on the job I was at the time was very, it put everybody on temporary emergency leave and things like that. So I had nothing to do. So I started one really just because I wanted to have an excuse to talk to people. And it was fun, but that was not this podcast, but that was one I did before I started this one. So I totally get that.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
The editing part's not, but
yeah, that is true.
And also, and I feel like you recognize this, since the Gem Study podcast has gone away, there's a podcast-sized hole in our community.
Right, yeah.
And, if I can, at least for musicians, if you were dropping a record, you went on Gem Study podcast and you talked about it with Terry.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you did. It was one of the, we don't have a lot of avenues of promotion as independent musicians, and that was one of them that's available to us Daytonians. And like I knew every Wednesday I was getting a music episode, and it might be a band I liked, it might be a band I didn't, it might be a band from Dayton I'd never heard of, and I would discover their music. I love that episode every week. Yeah. And now we don't have a place for musicians to go talk to when they drop a record. I kind of want to be that. I want to be that person if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it seems like you looked at the same podcast as whole, right? There's nobody talking about community issues and talking to small business owners and showing people that our city is pretty decent. Let me be that guy, right? So, yeah, maybe people who liked the Gem City podcast will gravitate toward ours. Who knows?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I think that would be great. But yeah, they, now that I've done this for a little over a month now, I wonder how they kept it all up. It's a lot. So
3 episodes a week.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot.
If you go back, I actually had Terry Izzy Rock Martin on an earlier episode, and he talks about the kind of work it was. It wore him out.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think he misses it, but I also think that he's kind of glad to have a break.
Yeah, I got that same sense, which is a great episode too. I definitely recommend people checking that out. Well, I should probably let you go soon, but if people would like to learn more about you and your music or your podcast, where's the best place for them to go? And do you have any other upcoming gigs that people should know about?
The best place to go is my website, MikeBankheadmusic.com or MikeBankhead.com. They will both take you to the same place. All of my songs are available there for free to listen to. You can also buy stuff there if you want to support me and get more music out of me. You can buy downloads there. You can buy actual CDs that I've made there. Also, the show notes for my podcast are over there, and my blog, which I generally update on Mondays, but didn't this week. But I also have a blog, and that's over on the website.
Nice.
If you are someone that enjoys Bandcamp, because they're pretty good to indie artists, I also have a Bandcamp page. That's mikebankhead.bandcamp.com, where you can also buy downloads and CDs. There is one album that I have released that is not on Bandcamp, and it's not on, it is on Bandcamp, but it's not on any streaming services. So if you want to hear all of my music, either Bandcamp or my website's the way to go. For the podcast, it is available anywhere you listen to podcasts. That would be iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Audio Mac, wherever. Just look for You Could Be My Aramis. Aramis is Aramis. As for shows, if this is up in time, I am playing Showcase Thursday on April 21st at Yellow Cab. That is free for you all to attend. And I'm really excited to be playing this one because there's a touring artist from Nashville named Olivia Francis who is brilliant. And I made friends with her before the pandemic. And every time she stops by Dayton, I try to get myself on that show.
Nice.
And I managed to get myself on that show. Also, a local band, The Nautical Theme, who are a fantastic duo. They write great songs. They have good chemistry together. They're not together. They're a band duo. I should clarify that. They're on that bill, too. The Nautical Theme, they're great. And Tesha from The Nautical Theme was kind enough to let me use her piano. So I'm going to actually play keys for my set that day. And I don't like to play keyboard in public because I'm terrible at it. This is me trying to stretch myself and challenge myself and taking a leap of scariness. So you might see just a complete awful train wreck of me on the 21st. So you should come out just to see if I manage to play these 7 songs correctly. And then, of course, the gig on Sunday, May 15th at Blind Bob's, myself, Kay Carter, with the hip hop and the rap and the excellent lyrics and the great stage presence and the smooth delivery, and 7,000 Apart, a pop duo from Stockholm/Green Bay. Like, they have 2 home bases, but at the moment they're in Stockholm. But they will be in Dayton in a month.
Very cool.
Please buy CDs and merch. If you have disposable, if you got your tax return, buy T-shirts.
Absolutely. And are you, what all socials are you on?
Oh, I have a music page and everything except for TikTok. So on Facebook, I am Mike Bankhead Music. On Instagram, I am at Mike Bankhead Music. On Twitter, I am at mbankhead Music. I also have a LinkedIn page and I have a Polywork page, but those are more business-oriented socials. But you can find me on all of the regular places.
Well, and when are you going to get on TikTok? Because
I don't
it's
think
probably
TikTok,
my favorite.
I don't think TikTok's for me. I really don't.
Oh, it's for everybody.
That's exactly what Terry said when we talked about it.
That's true. I see, 90-year-old grandmas on there, and there's all kinds of folks.
So to answer that question super honestly, I mean, I always answer everything honestly, but to be clear about my reasoning, in order to be decent at a social media site, it requires some time, right?
Oh, yeah.
And none of us musicians are really good at all of the sites we're on, which is a shame. It's a shame we even have to put the time in to do it. We don't really have another way to connect with an audience if you give me your email address, then I can talk to you. But other than that,
right.
Social media is what I got, right? So you have to ask yourself as a musician and as an artist, is this platform representative of my goals as an artist? How will this help me bring music to people? How will this help me reach people? How does this reflect my personality? And I don't feel like TikTok's a good match for me with any of those things. It's a short form video platform, right? I hate seeing my face on a video. I'm horribly ugly. I don't want to watch a video of me. And if I put a video on TikTok, is it going to make people go buy a CD? No, they're just going to scroll to the next video. They're not going to listen to my music. They'll move on to the next thing on TikTok. So unless I am motivated to see a path to it being beneficial, not just for me as a musician, but for me to bring some value to the audience and reach people, I don't know that I'll do that.
Well, I gotta say, you can do 3-minute videos now. And also there are plenty of musicians I've started following through TikTok. So I think there's a lot of potential there. I think you should check it out. I don't know. I would love to see you on there.
I know that I would have at least one watcher, so that's good.
Exactly, yeah. I'm sure you'd have a lot more, but
you keep trying to convince me, and you might eventually bring me around.
All right, I'll keep working on it. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me and having me on your show too. I really appreciate it, and it's really fun talking with you. So
yeah, it's always nice to meet a fellow Xenian and a fellow cool dude. Well, I mean, you're cooler than me, and you're a professor. So,
well, I'm just a lecturer. Don't let Sinclair hear you call me.
Just a lecturer. All right. I mean, I'm not a lecturer or a teacher of any kind. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you. One thing that Mike was kind enough to do was to share a file for Bright Ideas with me so that I could play it for you all. So I'm going to go ahead and play that, and then we'll do the outro for the show. So here is Bright Ideas by Mike Bankhead. All right, that was Bright Ideas by my guest today, Mike Bankhead. And if you've heard of any Guided by Voices stuff, then I'm sure you picked up on their influence in it. It was really fun talking with Mike both on this show, but also on his podcast. The episode he recorded with me should be out this Friday, so be sure to check out his podcast, You Could Be My Aramis, and give that a listen as well. Visit MikeBankhead.com to find out more about Mike. And thanks so much for listening. Take care and stay funky, Dayton.